Hi guys, welcome back to eCoreAcademy. My name is Aastha Kulkarni, and I'm the English 1 course teacher here at eCore. If you guys had watched my last grammar lesson, we had talked about fragments and run-on sentences. Today we're continuing on with the grammar series on a lesson about subject-verb agreement. Before I get started, I just want to simply say that if you guys are liking our videos, you're liking the content that we're putting out there, it would mean a lot to us if you just show your support by liking, commenting down below, and then subscribing, hitting that post notification bell, and most importantly, sharing with friends and family that you think may benefit from these lessons. Without further ado, let's just hop right into it. So these are pretty much the basics of this lesson, but I just want to make sure you guys have the foundation down before we add some more complicated concepts on top of it. So I'm just going to quickly go over what a subject is and what a verb is. So a subject is a person, place, thing, or idea that is doing an action or being described in a sentence. So it's basically the person, place, thing, or idea that the sentence is being revolved around. There's no subject, there's nothing that is the focal point of the sentence. So we just have some simple examples here. Bob, the school, cupcakes, them. Just very simple examples. And then we have what is a verb. A verb is a word that expresses an action, occurrence, or state of being. It's basically what the subject is doing in the sentence or what they are being. If you're confused on what state of being means, it's basically those helping or linking verbs like is, are, was, were, that are basically describing the subject, usually like a personality trait of the subject or a physical appearance trait. And then again, we just have some simple examples. You've probably seen these in a grammar lesson before, just runs, dances, feels, prefers, all great verbs. So let's move on to the these are basic rules of subject-verb agreement. So they're the ones here on the top in green. They're basically the same rule, but varied for two different situations. So on the left, we have a singular subject must have a singular verb. And then on the right, we have a plural subject must have a plural verb. Makes sense, right? You would think that anyways. So let's go into some examples just so you guys get a better understanding. So the one on the left says, she was upset when she heard the bad news. She is a singular subject. It's one person. So we're going to use a singular verb for that, which would be was. And then on the right, you can see I varied the sentence for a plural situation. So they is a plural subject because it's more than one person or more than one people, things, places, or ideas. So we're going to use a plural verb for that one. So the plural corresponding verb would be were. Next, we have the two more examples. They're the same ones, but instead they're with action verbs. Now, action verbs are kind of confusing for people. I'll explain in just a second why, but I'm going to read out the sentence first. So the one on the left says, the dog chases the black cat. So as we can know, the dog is a singular subject because there's no S at the end of it. It's just one dog. But in the verb, there's an S at the end of it. Now, many people would see that and they think, oh, the verb has an S at the end of it. Shouldn't that be a plural verb? No. For action verbs, it's kind of the opposite. Plural verbs for action verbs, they don't have an S. And then singular verbs for action verbs do have an S. So for action verbs, you want to keep that in mind. Keep that in the back of your head all the time. And just, if you're ever confused on which one to use, always just do that audio test. Just read the sentence out loud and then see which one makes more sense. So as you can see, if I read it, it says, the dog chases the black cat. If I were to use a plural verb by accident instead, it would say, the dog chased the black cat. You can hear it's kind of off-putting. It doesn't really sound right. So always just do that audio test to make sure you are using the right verbs, especially for those action ones, which can be a little bit more confusing with the S at the end. And then again, the example on the right is just the same thing, but for a plural situation. So we have the dog's plural subject because it has an S at the end. Don't be confused with the action verb. That will not have an S at the end because action verbs for plural, they don't have an S at the end. So it would be the dogs chase the black cats. So basically, I'm going to be going into 5 different examples of which subject-verb agreement can be a little bit tricky to understand. These are like the most common examples or instances, and I'm going to be giving you examples and solutions on how to fix these. So let's get started with compound subjects. Compound subjects are always joined by the word and they're usually both plural. It's not necessary, or it's not always, but most of the times you see compound subjects, they're usually both plural. So as we talked about in the last slide, plural subjects require plural verbs. So even though it's a compound subject, if both of the subjects in the compound subject are plural, then we're going to again use that plural verb. So that's why you can see bikers and runners, they're both plural because they have an S, are using a plural verb, which is compete. Bikers and runners compete in the race together. Next, it says compound subjects acting as a singular unit require singular verbs. So you might be thinking, what is a singular unit? What does that exactly mean? Basically, it's a subject that has an and in the middle but cannot be separated, otherwise it won't make sense. So as you can see in this example, it uses fish and chips. As most of us know, that's a singular dish. Even though it has an and in the middle of it, it's a singular dish. If you took it apart, it wouldn't really make sense. Same thing for like chips and salsa, peanut butter and jelly, all of those good foods. If there's an and in the middle and it's acting as a singular unit, then it's going to require that singular verb. So that is why we're using is instead of are. Are would be the plural one, but since fish and chips is a singular unit, we're going to use is, which is a singular verb. So it would be fish and chips is on the menu tonight, dinner menu tonight. This is the slide continued. I know there's a lot of words on this page, a lot of highlights on this page, but just stick with me and I will be sure to explain all of it. So the first one says, two or more singular subjects joined by or nor require a singular verb. So as we can see, our compound subject is right here, highlighted in yellow, joined by the word or. The two individual subjects are singular. They're two different book titles, so they're both singular. So in that case, when there are two singular subjects in the compound subject, we're going to use a singular verb. Makes sense, right? You kind of want to be pairing singular with singular and then plural with plural. So we're going to use is because both of the subjects in the compound subject are singular as well. So it's going to be either Jane Eyre or Oliver Twist is our summer reading book. Next, we have that two or more plural subjects joined by or nor require a plural verb. So again, it's just a different situation of the previous bullet point. So our two plural subjects in the entire compound subject is plates and bowls. We know they're plural because they have an S at the end. That's for subjects, remember, not for action verbs. So we're going to use a plural verb for this one. So cost would be the plural verb that would agree with plates or bowls. And then lastly, this one's a little bit tricky, but as soon as I explain it, it'll make sense. If a singular subject is joined by or nor to a plural subject, then the subject closest to the verb decides the agreement. So basically what it's saying is if you have one subject that's singular and then one subject that's plural within that compound subject, then the subject that is going to be closest to that verb is going to take the agreement of it. So as you can see, our compound subject right here is flood nor tsunamis. Flood is obviously the singular one because there's no S at the end, and then tsunamis is the plural one. Excuse me. And then since tsunamis is closest to the verb, which is keep, the verb is going to agree with the word closest to it. So that's why keep is in plural form. If we were to switch the places of tsunamis and flood, and if it said neither tsunamis nor flood, then keep would take the place of, or they would take the agreement of the word flood. So then it would be keep with an S. Our next scenario, you can call it, would be confusing subjects. So I will admit sometimes subjects can be difficult to find. In this example, many people probably thought that the subject is high school. It is actually name. So as we can see, the subject is there is a new name. The verb is agreeing with name, not with high school. Subjects can usually be confusing because they sometimes follow the verb or are separated from the verb. which tends to trip people up sometimes. So as we can see in this example, it was even shown in this example too, but the subject ratings is separated from the verb, which is are, by like 3 words. So you want to remember that even though the subject and verb can be separated sometimes, they still have to agree. As it says in the last one, verbs must agree with their subjects even if words come in between them. So you just want to be mindful of that. This is a little side note. Some subjects, such as ones that express like length or distances or measurements, whatever, they are usually singular, even though they sound plural. So 120 yards. That has an S at the end, so many people would think that's plural. Yes, it is plural, but they are singular in terms of the verb that they're going to be agreeing with. So instead of saying 120 yards are the length of a football field, it's going to be 120 yards is the length. So you want to make sure that with measurements, you have to make sure that even if there's an S at the end of it, you want to make sure that your verb is singular. Collective nouns. Collective nouns require a singular verb when the group acts as a singular unit. So in this case, our single unit is the cast or cast. So we want a singular verb for that one. So it's going to be appreciates. The cast appreciates the flowers from the fans. And even though the cast, you can, again, do that audio test that I had mentioned previously. The cast appreciate the flower from the fans. You can kind of hear it doesn't sound right. It doesn't click in place. So you want to always kind of check that out. Especially in this scenario, it's going to be the most useful to do that audio test. And then this is kind of the opposite of the last one. Collective nouns need a plural verb when the group named acts as individuals. So the audience would be that it would be an individual. So then you're going to need a plural verb for that. So it's going to be the audience arrive 10 minutes before the play starts. Some collective nouns ending in S can be singular or plural. So you're going to have to use a singular verb to indicate when the group is acting as a unit. And then you're going to use a plural verb to indicate if those parts are acting separately. So I'm going to use the same subject so you can kind of see like the variation between the two. So statistics is our subject. It has an S at the end. So most people would think it's a plural one, plural subject. But as we know that there's 2 different meanings of statistics. Statistics can be like facts, or statistics can be a class, which would be 1 unit. So the example here says statistics is not a mandatory course needed to graduate. Since statistics is acting as a singular unit, we're going to use a singular verb for that one. And then again, use a plural verb to indicate that the individual parts, if the group are acting separately. So these statistics, this time we're talking about, those separate or those multiple facts, show that sleeping earlier can help with mood improvement. So since we have a statistics as like a plural verb, since it's more than one statistic, we're going to use statistics in this case is acting as a plural subject, so we're going to use a plural verb for that too, which would be show. Second to last one, we have indefinite pronouns. So I'm just going to kind of read off the list so you get a feel of what these are. Each, anyone, and everybody, those are like the main ones. They are always singular. No matter what you think, these ones are always going to be singular. So everybody buys at least one item at the auction. If it's an indefinite pronoun and it's in that list, you're gonna use a singular verb for it. So that's why we're using buys with an S, because for action verbs, singular ones have an S at the end. And then the second list over here that says both, many, few, and several, they're always plural. It's just the rule, honestly. But if we're going to use few in this sentence, the few that like caviar are from France. So we have few right here. So we're going to make sure that our verb that we're using is going to be plural. So that's why it is like without an S. And this kind of connects back to our third scenario, or second scenario, which was confusing subjects. Remember that even though there's a word in between them, we're still going to agree that subject and verb. And then this is another list. All, any, some, enough, most, and none are singular when they refer to singular words and plural when they refer to plural words. You're probably like, what does that even mean? So as you can see in the first example, most of the cities are crowded at night. So this pronoun most is referring to cities, which is plural. So since cities is plural, we're going to use a plural word or plural verb for that. So that's why we're using are. In the same example, if we alter it to have it refer to a singular word, then we're going to use a singular verb. So then it would be most of the city is crowded at the night. So for indefinite pronouns for this list right here, you want to make sure you're reading the sentence, understanding what that subject is referring to first, and then based on that reference, you're going to decide if you need a singular or a plural verb. Lastly, we have amounts. Amounts, like percentages or fractions, are singular when the amount acts as a unit and plural when the amount acts as many parts. So I just have one example here. 1/2, it's a fraction. 1/2 of the school want earlier lunches while the rest don't. I know this one won't really work for the audio test because I will admit it doesn't sound right, but the reason it doesn't sound right is because many of you have probably been doing it wrong, which is the surprising part. So for percentages, since this one is working as a unit, 1/2 is like a unit, we're going to use a plural verb. So 1/2 of the school want earlier lunches while the rest don't. So that is all that I have for you guys today on subject-verb agreement. I really hope that this lesson helped you guys out and you were able to learn some new techniques or kind of just reinforce some of the skills you've been working on yourself. Thank you for tuning in. It means a lot to me. And once again, you guys should check our description box below this video for our website link and our Gmail if you want to contact us. And then the rest of our socials are also in that description box below. If you guys are liking our videos, be sure to show our support, and I will see you guys back for our next lesson. Bye, guys.